Okay. So I had this idea for me and Erica, my good friend, for what are we going on? 4 years now? I think
Yeah.
so. Four
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
4 years we met in coach training when we were much different people then.
Yeah.
And I said, what about coming on the podcast and we talk about all things generators, all things life? And so here we are.
Hmm.
So I asked her before we started recording, hey, what do you want to talk about? I think we should talk about like kind of how we found human design or human design found us or however you want to say it and the start of it because I think people have this misconception of like oh you realize that if you're not listening, if you're not watching, Erica's eyes are like so big.
I had
I
the
think
misconception, so I'm sure other people do.
you have this misconception that like oh okay so this is how I'm supposed to actually be or return back to who I am or however you want to say it and oh it's going to be like so simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. I don't feel like that's the way it's felt for me. What does it felt like for you?
The same. But I think it's the most rich journey I've ever taken for myself, for sure. You know what I mean? So, and
Yeah.
when you choose to do things that are full of richness, and when I mean rich, I mean like to me that word means all ends of the spectrum are felt. Like it's very robust, very rich, very dynamic. Um, it's definitely not always easy, but it becomes easier, I will say, like as time goes on. So I do want to say that to be true. It definitely becomes
I agree with you
easier.
there. Yeah. Because just like anything, right? Like you become more practiced at it.
Mhm.
You develop that muscle that muscle wasn't there before. And so I do think it becomes easier.
Yeah.
And I also think we keep evolving and we keep expanding or upping the ante, as I would say. And so then following it, it gets easier and like you're just continuing, like I think of like Mario Brothers, right? Like we just keep going up the levels. And so it still is, you're still always stepping outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. And I wonder how much the levels are brought to us because we are following it, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
if you're not following it, you're not on that pathway that, I don't play Mario. I'm not a very big video game person. So,
Me
but
neither, but
like
I'm like going back
where
to like
you would like,
1980s.
yeah, where you would, choose certain worlds or whatever, right? Because of your choices, because of the way that it opens up an energetic, this so I see like portal, so that those new levels are available to you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a gateway at the same time. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
see it.
Mm-hmm. So how did you find out about human design?
Hmm. So we have a shared wonderful friend, Gayla Gates, who it had found her a concept, and she had mentioned it to me, and she's like, "Oh, this human design thing," and I was like, "Okay, whatever," And I think maybe you had mentioned it. Like, I was getting it from multiple different inputs. I really, truly, this is my personal belief of watching this and my own experience. I don't think we say yes to human design until we're ready to walk the journey of becoming aware of who we truly are, which is a journey of grief and joy and everything in between. So I think I wasn't ready. I think there's a part of me that wasn't ready for probably 6 months to almost a year before I was like, all right, start. What are you guys talking about? Like in different conversations and just understanding more and more about it. Um, so, and I've noticed that at least in my experience with the people that are in my life, that's kind of a similar storyline that I hear a lot. Like they've heard of it or they saw a podcast with it, something where it's been dripped into their awareness, and then that it becomes stronger and stronger. And then for me, you know, I I saw my chart, I learned about my chart, but that still wasn't the commitment. Like that's the understanding of that there's this information available, right? Then there's the next step, which is to say, I'm going to go all in and commit to living my life this way, which is, I think takes a little bit, you come to that place too. It's like a stage wise progression. That's what I've noticed for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's knowledge, right? I think I got it. I understood it. No, I should say there's knowledge of it, right? Like, oh, okay, this is this thing and this, okay, this makes sense, right? Like this is intellectually in my
Mhm.
brain, right? This makes sense. And then there's like the understanding of the embodiment and like
Yeah.
living it. And
Mhm.
that the same thing for me, right? It was like, oh, this is neat. I started like looking at different people's charts and like I could see, right, like how it was helpful and how it was, and I couldn't even unsee it at that point, right? And also I hadn't really gotten to the place of like, okay, I'm going to start really listening and doing and heeding the call, following my sacral, like really following that. um it was more, I don't want to say surface level at first, but I think like anything, right? Like you learn something and you start just getting bits and pieces, and what you can receive or what you can understand and take in is whatever your bandwidth is at that time. And then you just keep, diving in deeper and deeper and deeper, and then you start really living it. I would say living it.
Yeah, I think it holds true even now where I'm at my journey. I think I only could take in at the current bandwidth what I could take in, which is actually kind of fun because you know that there's more and more layers that are, I don't know, it's become fun now to venture into it and to expand and to see all of the ways that life opens up and kind of like the, oh, I wonder what's around the corner, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of like anticipation, like fun anticipation kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
um so I think that probably holds, I hope that holds true, I don't, forever, because it's a fun way to live.
Yeah, for sure not the way I used to live. There was no like fun and anticipation of the unknown. It was like, oh shit, like all the control because I didn't like the unknown, right? If I
Yeah.
could just plan everything, which is such a fallacy, the word, but you think you try to plan and control and all the things so that you can avoid feeling certain things, certain feelings versus, and I think with feelings too, right? Like becoming practiced in like, it's not a problem. Like, I didn't even tell you this, but on the way to lunch today, we're currently in Portugal and we catch Ubers because even though it's 5 miles, it's like, it takes a while. So we catch Ubers to lunch, and I typically have my phone in my hand and I get out of the car and walk in the restaurant, and the waiter goes, oh, we have a menu online, just look on your phone. And I go to grab my phone and my phone isn't there. And he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And Grayson's like, do you want to sit over here and cry so you can hide? And I'm like, I don't need to hide and cry. I just need to cry right now. But, you know, years ago, that would have just rattled me, right? Like, I would have been so concerned and all the things. And thankfully, the Uber driver, we just played the iPhone noise, and he drove back and he dropped it off. But that feeling that probably I used to feel is like, it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to like, it wasn't okay to, I don't think really it was okay to feel, I don't want to say much, but like, I shouldn't say it wasn't okay to feel. It was more so of that there wasn't time to feel that. That was probably my story of like, there wasn't that, we don't have time to feel, like we've got stuff to do. And so, yeah, just telling the waiter, like, it's going to be a little bit like, first I need to like figure out how am I going to get my phone back? If I'm going to get my phone back, order something, just like all of the things versus how I probably would have been before of just like a complete shutdown, probably. Um, and so I think when we get practiced at feeling whatever comes up, whenever it comes up, then I don't think for me, it hasn't been, you get to look at it through like awe and wonder, because whatever you're going to feel is, it's okay to feel whatever range of emotion you're going to feel, right? Versus resisting, all of the lower vibration emotions.
Just makes me wonder, you know, how much of the ease in which that phone returned to you is because you were in the vibration of ease with yourself, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
wonder, we know this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That other mindsets we've been in or other ways of approaching it are ones of control and plan and like go, I call it go mode. That's probably the doctor in me, like the go mode, like the practiced, you know, whatever you're supposed to do in a trauma or code, like you just go into that,
Yeah.
which does not leave a lot of room for ease and doesn't leave a lot of room for, like you said, feeling. It's really not a feeling state. It's just a execution state
Yeah.
of
You're in
being, right?
action. Yep. Yep.
You know, and I wonder what if you were to play two movies at the same time in parallel streams, what would be the ending of movie A, which is
Mm-hmm.
come from go mode and not feeling, and maybe potentially a long winded saga of how it took for you to get this phone back. And then there's movie B, where you just are in the ease of it and whatever the ease is. And for you, sometimes ease is tears. And
Yep.
that's what it is. Because you're just letting everything move easefully. It all just gets to move. And so easefully your phone moved back to you. It's just
Yeah.
this fascinating thing of like, that's what I'm talking about, like the fun and the richness. Like when you allow yourself the grace to move with the energy that wants to move, it's amazing how the energy is here benevolently acting on your behalf and
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Yeah, like being supported. And I think also too, like giving myself, like, I mean, I know you just said that of like the actions, the go mode, but like just telling the waiter, like, it's going to be a little bit, right? And I think I would have had stories before of like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in this restaurant and I'm taking up a table. It wasn't that busy, but like I'm taking up a table, or he, like all of the stories. And I just was like, I just need a moment. I need to figure out, okay, how do you even get your phone back, because I don't have the phone number of the Uber driver, just like
Yeah.
really slowing down to be like, okay, what do I want to do? And of course, the only thing that was like feeling the tears was like, oh, my pictures, that was the only thing that I was concerned about. And I was like, it's okay, I'll take more of them, right? But just like you say, how easeful that was when I actually, that I've gotten better at, right? Feeling and also slowing down to be like, okay, wait a second. I got to think about how can I actually do this in order to, um, and yeah. So here he comes back. And I was like, oh, I want to kiss Bruno.
Oh, that's
Thank you
awesome.
so much. so, so yeah, I think that when we can allow ourselves to, and I think that's the other thing too, that I've really learned to do, which has not been my MO, is slowing down.
I'll never forget you saying to me one time when you were coaching me, I don't know if this is the exact verbiage, but something to this effect. Like allowing is a feeling state, Erica. Right? Because you can't slow down if you're not willing to go into the feeling state of allowing. And I know that words carries a lot of different connotations and meanings and vibrational energy on different spectrums, however you look at it. Even for me, I'm feeling all different angles of it, right? Like, um, but it's willing to be in the all different angles. And uh, I will say, I know we're talking about sacrals and kind of just putting this together. When you said that to me, I think that was one of the pivotal things that has helped me be able to not just feel my sacral or hear or get the vibration of my sacral, but trust it and implement or act on it, right? Is this a willingness to be in the state of allowing? And that's what you did, because to me, the state of allowing, I was just thinking as you were talking, like, I bet she went through like 30 different emotions in about 5 minutes or less. Like,
Yeah, it
I mean,
felt
we're
like
both
that. Yes.
emotionally defined, but you know, I think any human would go through multiple emotions in a very quick period of time. Or you lock into one because you're not willing to allow them all to come in and move, right? And then that one emotion governs you, which is usually terror or fear or panic or something of that heightened fight or flight kind of response, right? But even just in your scenario, like, oh, my pictures, I'm like, oh, there goes grief, and there goes this, and it's all just whoosh, whoosh,
It
in and out.
totally,
You know what I mean? Um, but I just want to offer, I think that was a pivotal shift for me in my understanding. And because I am a one line, I am logic. I have a lot of logic in me still, no matter what. And that gave me logic to the process to understand, I like to know process. So it
but
helped
that's
me
good. But that's how you
understand,
are. Yeah,
yeah,
of
the
course.
process of what it takes to do what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like there is a step in that process. I think for
Yep.
both of us, it's gotten shorter,
Yeah.
but I'm going to be honest. I mean, there's steps in that. There was a time when you talk about like the beginning where that emotion of allowing, that period of allowing, especially not understanding my wave, was like days sometimes on certain things, and
It's
being willing to be there, or I
being
don't know.
willing to be there. It's funny you say that because I said yesterday to Jason, I said, nobody really, maybe they do, I don't know, but like everyone talks about like, uh, you know, the higher vibration emotions. I'm like, nobody's talking about allowing and courage. I'm like, to have what we want, I think those, I don't even, like I've told you before, I don't know if allowing is a feeling, but whatever it is, like, right? Like those are the two feelings that I feel that have really allowed me to take leaps because, you know, I think bravery comes from a very ego place, right? Like just like muscle through and just go do it, right? Versus courage is like, I'm terrified and I'm still willing to move forward. And the allowing piece of like we just talked about, you can only whatever you're willing to receive is as much as what you're going to allow, right? Receive in all forms, right? Of emotion, of abundance, of wealth, of friendships, of love, all of that, right? Like, what are we allowing? And I don't think it's an emotion that we talk about enough, but I think it's probably been, like you say, one of my most transformative is the word that comes to mind, but like biggest ones.
And not to bring in other pieces and parts of HT here, but I think it is important from my perspective. I have a very defined head and ajna, and then I have a body, and they operate separately a lot of times. I'm split definition, and that I couldn't understand what that I was feeling in my body because it's truly a toggle. I've come to, until I level up. I get to these places where I'm at one with the toggle, but it's there, right? But this idea, because to me, allowing, I guess you could say, but to me, it almost feels like a state of being. It's a state of being that you're just being an allowance so that all of the pieces and parts can come together in the way that they're all supposed to come together, right? Without you trying to control and manhandle it with however that is, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think for me, that state of being and a deep trust that it will lead, no matter how long it takes, it will
Mm-hmm.
lead to some sort of clarity, right? Because we all want
Mm-hmm.
clarity,
Mm-hmm.
has been a gift that I've given to myself because it's not easy. Um, but like anything, you do it once and it's a little tough, and the second time becomes easier. Third time becomes easier, um, and now it's kind of like I love being in the state of allowing because it means something's changing, shifting. I'm going for it. New adventures coming. It is that kind of anticipation kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
allowing energy now. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
I gotta
It's not
grin
a
and
gripping.
bear it. Yeah, like kind of energy.
Yeah.
Um, and that you're also willing to allow, like you said, allow all possibilities to come in to
Yes.
receive.
We're not talking about just the high. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, high and low,
Yeah.
but even higher than you could ever imagine. like greater, better than you can have. If you put some cap on it, you've capped it off. Like you're willing to let it, to push one button and your iPhone just shows up at the restaurant you're sitting at. Like that's like what we would have picked out in that scenario, right? You were willing to allow all of it so that the magic can happen, like the fun stuff. And that is kind of magical if you think about it.
I'm just like, because I was able to sit there and be like, oh, Bruno, thank you so much. And just like, as I think about it, it's like literally like from the time we got out of the car to the time we sat down to the restaurant to the time that it came back was probably 10 minutes, And like you said, like feeling so many ranges of emotion. And like you say, just allowing all of it. And then, yeah, boom. And we had the best lunch and, all the things. And just, yeah. Yeah. You said something about, and I think this is a topic for another podcast. And I do want to talk about it because both of us have a defined head in ajna. And I think that is, if you think back about how we were made, right? We were made to use our minds, right? That did serve a purpose. And I know that we've talked about this several times for both of us, right? That you can easily go back into the mind when you have, I feel like, a defined head in ajna because it's just so strong.
I mean, and let's be honest, many times feel safe.
Oh, for sure.
Right? I mean, so like, I think that's, for me, that was one of the, still is the tougher things about following my sacral is there's sometimes it doesn't always feel completely safe, right? When it feels a lot more safe to be in a prescribed pattern that is very well delineated in my very defined head and ajna, right? Like that feels, it's known, it's safe. I can predict the outcome many times, good or bad. A predictable outcome, no matter what it is, feels sometimes safer than no outcome that you, or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's I definitely think I'm working on it, but I think it's something to really be compassionate with yourself about.
Yeah. I always describe it like, the Japanese trains, they go like 200 plus miles an hour. Like literally, I feel like, my defined head in ajna is just like, because before you know it, because if you don't stop, if you don't pause and ask yourself and you really get back into your body, like I'm already 15 steps down the road with my mind, right? And so it's that practice of like bringing it back and asking myself, but do I want to, right? Because a lot of my ideas sound really good, right? But then do I want to? Does this feel good for me?
Mm-hmm. I think you said a word that's very important is the word practice. And not like, yes, you have to practice it, but more like a I call it reverent discipline. But it'd be no different than any athlete trying to augment like their serve or their shot or whatever. Like they know they're going into the gym or whatever, and it's going to feel awkward, but they're going to slow down. They're going to do it as many times as it takes, and they're going to slow down, and they're going to slow, and they put that discipline or that practice in, to do it. It is something, and you'll miss it when you first start, and I still do, and then you'll be like, oh, forgot to do that part of the deal. You come back and like, but the more you do it, the more it starts to become
the faster,
right, just part of who you are now. Like, do I want to go eat lunch right now? I mean, just very simple, mundane stuff, right? Like, is it in the highest for me to do X, Y, and Z? Like, it just starts to become, but it is something that is a little awkward at first. It's not your most practiced way of living.
I like the way that you say that because it is a reference. It is a discipline. And I know that word can be like, for me, discipline was it used to be a very, beating myself up word, like discipline for me meant like no matter what you would, but discipline now, it comes from such a loving place of doing things from a place of love for myself, of nourishment for myself. And the discipline, when you were saying like we're still like, I don't know if I'll ever be, all the way over to the end where I'm just completely right. Like I think you just still have a mind and you still right like that might always be the case. And I'm okay with that. And also the time that I notice when the flag is on the field or when I'm off in, the opposite direction is so much quicker, right? Like it doesn't take me days or weeks now. It's like sometimes it's minutes, right? And then depending on what it is, it can be, a couple of hours before I'm like, wait, hang on a second. Um, and that's okay. And I think it's like you say, the willingness for us to continue to bring ourselves back to be like, the discipline is like, I've chosen to follow my sacral, right? Like that is, even when it doesn't make sense, even when I don't have answers, which, because a lot of times you don't, right? There are no answers. It's just a yes or a no, or a body push pull, depending on, how it shows up for you. And getting comfortable with not having, because I think also for me, you have an undefined root too, right?
Yeah.
When people ask me questions and they want answers, sometimes they actually want the answers, right? And sometimes they're just curious and they're just like asking, but regardless, I feel that pressure, right? I feel the pressure to know, and I feel the pressure to do, and allowing it to just be like, I don't have the answer right now. And with clarity coming with time, I know it does come, just may not come on whatever someone's timeline wants it to be, what they want it to be. And that's okay. Like now I'm at that place, right? I used to not be at that place.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's one of the harder ones for me, especially coming from a background of my previous career lives where that really wasn't an option. Um, so I really overrode that a lot, and uh, and it's taken a while, and it's still there. Even like anticipating that other people are going to want the answer, even though they might not. But I still feel like that's still a protective strategy that's still in me a little bit.
For sure.
The kind of bracing for it,
Mm-hmm.
because it does feel very much like it's like a pressure that comes up from my pelvis all the way up. Like I can feel that like pressure, which I know is sometimes there for a benevolent reason to move things, but when you're in it, it, it can feel intense.
Mm-hmm.
And also that for some of us, there were repercussions when you didn't have all the answers,
Yep.
But it is very freeing on the flip side. Once you start, like I said, allowing, doing it more and more, it starts to become kind of fun to be like, I don't know where it's going, but this is what I know today. Like, how cool is that? Like, really getting to the fun part of it and be like, it's going to be awesome, whatever it is. I don't know what it is right now. I know I will know. That's fun. And that's kind of the part that I think is the piece that keeps you going. That pressure's there is just trusting that way of living is not there as a detriment, but more as an opportunity, as more as an invitation for more fun, more joy, more adventure.
That's what I was going to say. You said it, right? I had to develop a relationship with trust.
Mm-hmm.
I had to develop a relationship with something bigger, higher power than me. Like I didn't really grow up going to church, right? So like that faith muscle, that trust muscle really wasn't there. It was kind of like you're on your own, you got to make it happen, right? So for me, it was really developing that relationship with being supported, trusting that, you know, following your heart, your sacral, however you want to describe it, right? Like that is going to, that you will be supported. And it may not look the way you want it to, right? That's the other thing, right? And, but like, it'll always work out. And that was something that I think I really had to, I don't want to say like dig deep or work on, because it sounds like, but like that was something I really had to build up. That muscle was super weak.
Well, it's interesting because I wrote down this question when you were talking earlier. I wrote down, how do you know when you are off? Meaning, like you said, when I'm off, you know, when I haven't followed my sacral and things, and then I catch up and I'm like, oh, get back. My question to you is, how do you know when you're off? Like, what's happening around you?
For me, it's typically how I feel. And this isn't to be confused with like, okay, I want to say two things here. How I feel, and that is more so, if we want to call it like frustration, it feels like a lot of effort. It feels like a lot of work, right? I feel those lower vibration emotions. And when going back to like courage, what we said, right? Like when you are and for something, it doesn't mean you're going to feel like amazingness while you're doing the thing. I think that was like the delineation that I needed to like work through and figure out, because I think I used to think like if I followed it, then I would always feel like amazing and like, you know, but that's not necessarily how it is. But for me, it's more so frustration. It's more so it feels like effort, and it feels like, I don't want to say nothing's working, but that's what it feels like. It just feels like a lot more energy.
Yeah, the reason I asked you that because I've noticed similarly when, like you said, I don't know where it's going. So I don't know the outcome. And sometimes it's not always quote unquote perfect. You know what I mean? But it definitely moves with a different kind of energy. It's definitely a flowing kind of energy. And usually it's not a suffering kind of thing. It's more transformation pain or growth or a lesson
Yes.
to be learned. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not like suffering kind of pain, which I think there's two different aspects
Yes.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But it moves in a way where you're right. There's no effort in it. There's no work. The energy, you know me, I feel things. The
Mm-hmm.
energy just feels lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so things are just moving at a different, it's almost like a nice river that's just flowing at a cadence
Mm-hmm.
versus something that's having to have a whole lot of force behind it to make it move. And that's for me how I've noticed more so when like, oh, I must have forgotten to ask my sacral this because I feel like I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
trudging through mud here. You know what I mean? Like that kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and usually when I back up, it's because I didn't ask. And there's the whole situation might not change drastically, but there's some piece of the puzzle that I just didn't click into the right vein of energy, right? It doesn't align with what's wants to move, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I operate on the pretense, and this is just my personal belief, that our sacrals are divine connection. It is to that
Mm-hmm.
higher power. And
Mm-hmm.
everything that moves through us is for the highest good.
Mm-hmm.
It is here to serve not only us, but everyone around us.
Mm-hmm.
And so when everything around you starts to feel like muck, then to me, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm off.
Pause.
Like something's
Mm-hmm.
not right here.
Yep.
That's just, I
That
don't know.
that's exactly, yeah, like you summed it up beautifully. Like that's exactly what it feels like. And I want to say that only you, right? You listener know what that feels like in your body. Like we can talk about this all day long, but you have to actually experiment for yourself and do it for yourself and see what it feels like in your body, and to get to know those sensations and how that shows up for you in your body.
Because, you know, it feels to me similar to that concept that sometimes is talked about where, where we group things and like our brain naturally groups things into categories, right? For like storage purposes or however you want to word it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you group feeling states into categories. We've labeled them, but we're only going by the labels we've given them based upon past experience. So like the one that always sticks out for me is the difference between like nervousness, anticipation, excitement. They're all very similar vibrations. And if you don't take a step back and ask yourself which one it really is and feel into the intricacies of each one for you, you're going to group them all as nervousness or something that might hold you back from something that you enjoy potentially. I kind of feel like this is a similar thing, right? Where it asks of you to step back and stretch out the timeline, feel into it, however you do. I think we all do that differently, so that you can decipher the subtle differences between, right, transformational shifting of energy for you to evolve to a higher purpose and person versus muck versus like, but if you really think about it, they're all grouped to, they all have very similar characteristics except for the finer points is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, can be, right? And I think we all have total control over our lives. And I also believe that we have been conditioned to live certain ways, right? And so slowing down has probably been, my mind would tell you that doesn't make sense. It's not going to get you, where you want to go, all of the things, right? And it has been the best, probably one of my best tools is slowing down. And another podcast of like our solar plexus of riding our waves, but like for me it takes me longer than what I think I thought I took, right? And allowing for that, because if you just think about purchasing things, right? Purchasing a car, purchasing, some big ticket items, right? Several thousands plus dollars, right? Like we're expected to make a decision then. And that is not how I make a decision. And what I've also realized is I need to go and do the thing several times to, like, one time is not enough for me to like feel it, right? Um, unless I'm a no, then that's plenty, right? But like if I'm a yes for something, I still have to go back and like touch it, be in it, do the thing, or like, think about it. And when I say think about it, yeah, like, but like the whole scenario of it, of like play it kind of out for me to feel, um, is that what I really want? And does that feel good? Because I do have those highs and those lows. And I don't think anyone, I don't know if I have ever, like, time has not been um celebrated, what's the word I want to use, like, a loud thing. It was just like, hurry up, quick, make decisions quickly.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think it's definitely the instant gratification component because this is coming in. The world around us is current day. I think it's shifting, but set to external validation is what drives us. That's how we were. I mean, that's how I lived for a very long time. Still do in certain scenarios, right? And it is, again, like, are you worthy? Are you willing? Are you worth it enough to slow down and develop that internal validation that no matter how long it takes, it's worth it to me? I mean, we both could sit here and talk about many scenarios since we both have waves that we said yes in the first moment. And then a day or two later, like, oh my gosh, what did I just say yes to? Like, this is not a yes for me. I mean, I did that work projects, family. I mean, I think, and also it, again, going back to your point, there is a trust factor that everything is working on your behalf. And even if it takes you 2 weeks to make a decision or whatever it is, it will be in the most highest aligned timing then. That will be
Yep.
when the highest, most amazing result, whatever you want to call it, plays out.
Yeah.
And just setting that intention that that's how you choose to live.
Yeah.
I will also say one more point. I cannot speak more volumes to surrounding yourself with people who give you grace and the space to live the way that you need to live.
Yes.
I mean, our relationship is pivotal for me to be able to be in a situation where I don't have to respond to you for days and you don't care. You know what I mean? Like, just to have places, safe places to practice with it, to experiment, whatever you need to do to talk about it, to speak the truth about how you're feeling as you walk this journey is invaluable. It's not one that I think is easy to do on our own.
I agree. Yeah. Because I do think we're completely flipping, right? I know that I flipped the way that I used to live on its head, right? And I think as a society, right? Like, I mean, you come from a medical background, I come from a finance, like answers and A plus B had to equal C, right? Like that's just the way that it was. And so being around people that support how you are living, and I think also from a, it's twofold. I think it's like one, being around people that support, because all of the different types, right, that can support generators, and also being around other generators that get it, like that understand, like, hey, I know the path that you're walking, right? And having that, like, yeah, me too, I know it's tough, right? Sometimes we don't need to be coached, or we don't need anything. We just need someone else to just be like, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I love you, like, and that is enough to just,
Yeah.
to make the transformation, or to go, it's just so,
It's enough to give you that boost of safety to keep going,
yeah,
because it doesn't there, let's be honest, there are times where whether you are not, or it's just your storyline you're running on based upon past experience, doesn't matter. Your perception is you're not safe.
yep,
And just
yeah,
really honoring that. I personally believe when we say yes to enter into this conversation of human design, I think our higher self is really acting on our behalf. I think we have a dualistic relationship with our higher self and with our humanness.
mm-hmm.
But we're human.
Yeah,
We're human.
yeah,
And many of us who can tap into that higher self, we easily can forget the human part. Erin
yeah,
reminds me of this all the time because I tend to need reminding. I think, and just to, like you said, to have somebody not question that you're not going to make it. You know what you're doing. You're not giving up. It's not that you're wavering on whatever. It's just that you're human.
yeah,
And this is hard.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think a lot of us come from careers and backgrounds where that was not allowed.
no,
That was not seen as safe.
no,
To be like, hey, wait a minute, my humanness needs a minute to catch up here. Like, I understand what we're doing, but I have some thoughts and feelings, and I just need a minute,
yeah. What comes to mind is like, it's on the bucket list. I haven't been there yet, but like a safari, right? Like when the hyenas like totally annihilate the animal, right? Like that is what it feels like we have been, where when we say, like, that's why we haven't been able to say it, right? Because if you showed you were weak, air quotes, right? If you showed and you said, I need a minute, then, you weren't capable, you weren't. And so we just learned to shut it up. At least I did, shut it up and shut it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus we're saying, like surrounding yourself with people that are like, hey, takes as long as it takes. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
And I'll be here if you need anything.
Well, because sometimes, at least for me, that is not something that comes natural for me to say to myself and to give myself that grace. So to lean on somebody else to almost give you permission a little bit, sometimes we need that. Like when it
Yeah.
is not maybe it's our natural way of living, but it's not our most practiced way of living, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you need somebody outside of you to say, take as long as you need. And then
Yeah.
and you're like, oh yeah, wait a minute, I can take as long. Okay, yeah, let's
Yeah.
take as long as we need. It's
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got anything else you want to say? I'm like, I feel all warm and fuzzy right now. I love it.
No. The only thing that's coming in for me, if anyone who happens to listen to this someday, whenever you're listening, is kind of in that state of, because I think when we make this commitment and we really choose to go on, it's not, we're making a commitment, right? Like it's not like I think it's something we
We're not
come to
dating.
over. Yeah, I think it's something we come to over time. And I think if you're in that phase before you've made that commitment, I just want to say for me personally, it has been the most rewarding. And I made a lot of commitments to myself. I've done some tough stuff. But this one, I mean, this blows like becoming a doctor out of the water. You know what I mean? Like of the reward, the internal and the joy and the peace and the solidarity and the connection to myself and beyond what I call the divine, like that, like the magic, the mystery, the fun of it. Like I'm just, it's there if you choose for it to be there when you're ready.
The vision that comes is like a big plush. Have you ever seen those couches that like they're made for basketball players where they're like 5 feet wide and like 6 feet high? Do you know what I'm talking about? And it's like a big
Yeah.
L couch.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like for me. It's like a sinking in and a complete comfort and like being completely okay being exactly who I am, and like it's just like the little like rooting down, like it feels good. It feels like home. It feels like solid is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's available to everyone if they choose it.
And on another front, I will say there is not a dynamic of my life that has not gotten more robust, more
Yep.
rich, stronger relationship. Your brain may say things will fall apart, but it has been in my experience personally and watching others is the complete opposite that holds true.
Yeah.
Um, so I just say that with certainty that it opens doors to connection with other humans and with your dreams and with what brings you joy and nature and all of it in ways
Yeah.
that you can't even fathom.
Yeah. And we're not meant to, right? Like really not. I mean, when you think about it, it's like not meant to. You can't even fathom it, right? Because it's not even from that space anymore.
Which is
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Until next time.
next time.
Okay.